what this is all about is, for me, it's been a real change of direction in my art. Uh, for many, many years, I painted outdoors landscapes of Anasquam images and portraits and things of that nature, but I never painted large. And I was urged by Rosemary Glenn, an artist in town, and my wife, Jerry, to start painting big. And I resisted that for many years. Well, I'd say 2 or 3 years. And then finally I gave into it, and I started working on a very large painting, and rather than painting with brushes, I painted with a palette knife. And the first painting I did was about the size of this. This is about 36 by 36. And for me, this is really big, because I've always painted a lot smaller than that. And what I did was, instead of using brushes, I used a palette knife, and I put a lot of paint on the palette. And you take a long knife and you put some of the paint on the edge of the knife, and you smear it on. And this was the first time that I was painting with a palette knife and doing smearing painting, that kind of stuff. And this is not an exact science. Doing the painting here, you don't have to have exact drawings underneath the painting. You basically start with no drawing and you draw with the knife. So for example, if you want to start with a hillside, you take the knife and you just smear it right across the painting, and you've got a hillside. Similarly, if you want a house, you can take a small amount and just push it down and just make little shapes with the knife. You know, it's not a drawing with a pencil or paper. So this is all new, and the first painting I did was inspired by a monoprint of a landscape that Degas did in the 1800s. He did these little monoprints of landscapes, and he was not known for them because landscapes weren't an acceptable kind of art back then. So he did them in secret, and recently a book came out called Degas' Landscapes. And I went through the book and I saw some images that I was inspired by, and this is one of the images that inspired me. His painting, the house was much bigger, and there weren't 2 trees, there was 1 tree over there, and there wasn't any water in the foreground, whereas I just took the general composition, the idea of his composition, and I went in my own direction. And this painting was finished maybe in two days, so that's fast for me. And I loved it, because once I got putting a lot of painting on the canvas, I felt my spirit rising. I felt the passion, and the more passion I felt, the quicker I painted, and this became a really quick process. And it was a joy for me to experience that, because historically I've always done very careful paintings of smaller works that you know, kept your passion kind of limited a little bit. You don't get the same feeling of that you do when you're just letting yourself go. So this is the beginning of a new direction for me, where I'm now painting with a great deal of passion, with a great deal of paint, and large canvases. And this new direction, it can be seen in about 7 of the works. The non-Anasquam works in this village are all the paintings that were inspired, that inspired Degas, that also inspired me. And so that can be seen in, if you go around the room, this painting, of course, this painting of marshes, which is also done with a palette knife, you know, just pushing the paint around and scrabbling around in the sky, putting some paint this way and a little paint this way, and no brushes, all a knife, palette knife. And normally to do this, you would just, you know, take the paint and just move it straight across the canvas and paint it that way. Over here, right next to that painting, is kind of a fantasy painting. Degas' painting was a lot more literal. I mean, it looked like a real scene. It didn't have any of this fantasy work that I put in. These houses in his painting were very small and of different sizes, and I took those little shapes and I made them very large and in colors that inspired me, not in colors that inspired him. So that's what I did here, again with a knife, just making the triangle shape and making this shape and going in that way. And here you can almost see the way I scraped down the paint all the way across the surface of the water. And the sky, of course, again, is done with just large sweeping strokes of the paint. So it's a lot easier than people think. I mean, you're not really doing a careful drawing. You're really just going in there and painting abstract shapes, which is what this is all about. So if you go around the room in the other direction, you'll see some more Degas-inspired landscapes. This is a roofscape. It's about the roofs and houses of a little village in south of France. Again, my painting looks nothing like Degas'. His was a very traditional painting, and I went for atmosphere with a lot of white paint, painting again, these are all abstract shapes, rectangles, squares. Here's another rectangular shape. This is kind of a semicircle, and that's the way a painter thinks. We think abstractly. We're not thinking of walls, roofs, houses, steps, water. We're just thinking of shapes, colors, and values. So this is, again, inspired by Degas' landscapes. Another is this smaller painting, which is just a series of rocks. Again, done very abstractly. You know, you can see the shapes. You can even see the negative shapes. The darks have shapes of their own. So this is what you do with the knife and the paints. You just scrape it on the canvas, and the nice thing about oils is you can't make a mistake. You know, if you make a mistake, you don't like it, you can always paint over it. I mean, oil is the most forgiving medium to paint in. You can't do that with watercolors, because you make a mistake with watercolors, you have maybe one chance of correcting it and then you ruin the paper. So with oils, you can make unlimited mistakes and still come out with a nice painting. So it's a lot easier. And the other two paintings that are Degas inspired, one is on the far wall of roofscapes. These are all roofs. Again, this is an obvious example of painting abstractly. I mean, you can look at all these shapes and they're all painted individually. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one. They're all abstract shapes, and you can put your own colors. You can put a red color over here, and you can overpaint it with a blue color on top. And the red color remains, and the blue color, you can see both colors at the same time. Similarly, with the sky, you know, you can put one red color on the canvas, you go across that, and then you can overpaint other colors on top of the red and come out with combinations of colors, which is how a knife painter paints. And finally, the last image in this series is the boat painting, the boat on the beach. This is done really fast. I mean, to paint the boat, you take the knife, which is this size, with some paint on the edge, and you just move it across this shape. Same with the shadow. You just move that knife across the shadow shape, and you can draw this literally with 3 or 4 moves of the knife. And that's how this, of course, can be done literally in 10 seconds, and this can be done very fast as well. And you're painting fast, because this is not careful painting. This is really fast knife painting, putting more on. And the faster you paint, the more excited you become. The more excited you become, the better you paint. So it's kind of a slippery slope. You get better as you paint faster, and this inspires you to paint faster. The other paintings in the exhibit are Annisquam images. This is a view of Annisquam from up Leonard Street to Cambridge Avenue, looking down from Cambridge Avenue down towards the intersection between Leonard and River Road. This is not an exact painting, it's an abstract version of the houses that I see. I don't include all of the houses. I mean, there are other houses in here that have been eliminated because it just, you have to make selections when you're painting. So I just chose to paint these few houses, and otherwise this is fairly much like the tree shapes that you actually see when you stand there. So what I do is I look for the shapes within the trees and I paint those shapes, and then I'll refine it as I go. Here is a painting of Dennis Flavin's studio down Dennis Lane. As you come into Annisquam on the right, you pass Nashua Avenue on the right, and then you have a big White House, and right next to the White House is a lane called Dennis Lane, and you walk 100 steps down the lane, and that's Dennis Flavin's studio. And I stood there maybe for 3 hours on 4 separate occasions to try to do that. And again, the same principles apply. This is one big shape, and this is another big shape. And you try to paint the shapes. You're not thinking in terms of a house or a roof or wall or rocks. You're just thinking about shapes. And that's the same with this, all these little rock shapes, a door shape and stuff like that, some more rock shapes. But what you're trying to achieve is painting the light. Painting is about painting light on form, how form looks when it's got light cast on it. So the whole object of this painting is to paint what light looks like on these forms. And that's what makes painting exciting. When you see light painted in a painting, the painting seems to be very popular, and it works very well. So that's what I tried to achieve here, is sunlight with some haze in the day. It's kind of like you have to paint atmosphere. And to paint atmosphere, you just put white into your colors, and you try to paint kind of a hazy feeling in all of these various colors, and that gives you a sense of afternoon light, afternoon haze. These series, it's all Annisquam images, are of places in Annisquam that are familiar. And what I wanted to do, again, was to paint the light, not to paint the scene. So to paint the light, you'll take a camera and you'll take a photograph into the sun, which bleaches out some of the image. And that's what happens here. Everything is in silhouette because the sun is behind it, kind of shining into your face. And that's called the glare paintings. This is what I call the glare painting series, where this is the village church. It's all in silhouette because I'm looking into the sun, and the sun, the light from the sun is obliterating some of the image. And that gives you the sense of glare looking into a sun. And that's what we're painting. We're painting the glare. These things are just basic shapes that you put down. Tree shape is this, and you paint very simply these basic shapes. Here is, Leonard Street. As you're going out of Annisquam, you're taking that blind turn. This is the road being obliterated by the sunlight up here and the dark shapes around it because we're looking into the sun. And this is somewhat of the same thing, although much of the image is not obliterated by the glare. I mean, in the meadow, you can see some effect of the sun on the color shapes that surround it, but basically it's the way it looks. This is the beauty parlor on River Road. It's been there for years, in the 40s and 50s. Ladies would go into that little shed for hairdos, get their hair in rollers and stuff. And this is the sun coming over the hill, hitting the beauty parlor, and resulting in some of the shape of the beauty parlor, some of the images being obliterated by the sunlight, and the sun being a haze that affects the entire picture. And finally, this is not one of these glare paintings, but it's a small one that I just put on the wall with them. A painting, an abstract painting of Yacht Club. This is done entirely with a knife, no brushes, and you can take the white paint with some blue and just smear it right over the canvas. And if you want the darker shape, darker color in here, you just take a darker version of the white and just smear it back. And these shapes are done with a small palette knife. You know, that's about this size. You can just put those shapes right in. So painting is a lot easier than you think it is. That's the truth of it. If you look at the world abstractly, without thinking of things, just colors, shapes, and values, lights versus darks, you can paint. So this is my exhibit. I'm really excited about this exhibit because it's the first one that I've ever done of large paintings with a palette knife. And this exhibit really does have a lot of the spirit and passion that I feel on the canvas. I started painting really started learning how to paint when I was in my 50s. I was a lawyer in New York City, and I needed something to make me forget about my work. So I thought painting would be engaging, and I started taking lessons with a Brooklyn realist who taught me how to see, which is basically more than how to paint. If you can see in a certain abstract way, then painting becomes easier. And he taught me for 3 years on Wednesday nights how to see. So that was the beginning of my art studies. And while I was in New York, being a lawyer, on Wednesday nights I would be in class, and on the weekends I would be in Prospect Park painting trees. So, and that persisted when I came to Annisquam in the 70s and 80s. I would come up here with my paints and paint Annisquam images on smaller canvases. And I did that for 30 years, 35 years, painting Annisquam scenes. Until 2 years ago when I started this project, and life kind of changed for me. I'm now painting big paintings. I'm putting a lot of paint on the canvas, and I'm using a palette knife. So I'm still learning as I get older. And the nice thing is, at the age of 77, I really feel like I've lived long enough to see certain paintings now that I really like to look at. So I feel very fortunate to be at that place in my life.